Every decade in the 20th century offered something new and profound to entice the future generations when studying them. So, what exactly was the most important decade in the 20th century? To me, that is an easy question to answer. The 1920s by far is the most influential and important decade there was and is. With the rise of the KKK, Prohibition, the Jazz Age and its effect on fashion, the bull market and age of prosperity, and the stock market crash, it seemed as if the Roaring Twenties were off to an interesting start. These were the five of many reasons why the 1920s was undoubtedly the most significant decade. With the Red Scare already happening, many people were playing on the fact that Americans were feeling unsafe and unwelcomed in their own country. The KKK, or more formally known as the Ku Klux Klan, fed on the insecurities of the citizens who felt they might be in danger. The Klan was formed in the beginning as a group of anti-communists, but soon made their true motive clear. The American's textbook states that the KKK was devoted to 100% Americanism. This means they harassed and terrorized anyone who was black, foreign-born, Catholic, or a Jew. Not only did this put fear in the American population back in 1924, but those same feelings have still carried on to present-day society, making this a major influential event in the 1920s. Prohibition, which was put into place by the 18th Amendment, had a hard time being enforced during the 20s. History.com mentions how those who wanted to keep drinking found ever more inventive ways to do it. People would make their own alcohol and sell it themselves, which became known as bootlegging. A rise of speakeasies gave men and women the opportunity to meet at nightclubs and drink liquor. Bootleggers and speakeasies unfortunately led to even more criminal activity. With an incline of illegal actions, the government had a difficult time controlling it. Because of these ingenious ways of thinking on behalf of those who still found a resourceful way to buy and sell alcohol, despite the government's laws, is another reason why the 1920s was a milestone decade. The Jazz Age was a time of freedom and change. Music started to grow and become even more diverse. History.com says what many young people wanted to do was dance: the Charleston, the cakewalk, the black bottom, the flea hop. Jazz music emerged and many older people condemned it, since it was new and different. Since dancing was a critical part of the 1920s, women needed extra movement in their clothes so they could freely dance with no restrictions. Loosely fitted dresses were the new norm, and they often were accompanied by lower waistlines. These modernized and cutting-edge advances in fashion and music impacted the 1920s for the best. The economic boom of the 1920s was powerful. People were constantly buying stocks from the stock market, which helped create the bull market. The bull market is explained as a long period of rising stocks. An increase in consumerism and credit, along with a reduction of taxes, made Americans feel like they could buy whatever they wanted whenever they wanted. Since the bull market had tempting prices for stocks, it encouraged speculation. This, in all, was the American dream. Having no cares in the world, buying anything you wanted, and living a life to the fullest was exactly how Americans viewed this time of prosperity. Even though this did not last for long, it affected how Americans lived their life, which carried over for years. The stock market crash was an event that changed America forever. Just when people were enjoying their lives, all of a sudden there was an extreme sense of panic that rushed through the country. History.com describes the stock market crash as the deepest and longest lasting economic downturn in the history of the Western industrialized world up to that time. Many circumstances were factors of why this happened, such as debt, low wages, unemployment, and an excess of large bank loans that could not be liquidated. This resulted in the U.S. diving deep into the Great Depression. Americans had a rough time getting back up on their feet and trying to find jobs that would support themselves and their families. Since this was the ultimate decline of the 1920s, it shaped how the following decades would go about their ways and struggle to find a way out of this mess. Overall, the 1920s was the most important decade of the 20th century for multiple reasons. The rise of the KKK showed how nasty people could truly be. Prohibition created creative minds that outsmarted the government. The Jazz Age had a big influence on fashion and music for the younger generation. The bull market and the age of prosperity brought about a time where Americans felt safe and secure in their lives, which created happiness and joy. The stock market crash unfortunately took that happiness and left Americans feeling distraught and lost, which ultimately led to a period of time where no one knew what to do. Because of these five reasons and more, I believe the 1920s was by far the most important decade of the 20th century.